Call back to order the meeting of the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Supervisors Frost.
Here.
Natoli.
Here.
Peters.
Here.
Cerna.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
And you have a quorum. Okay, item 49 is the George Hales Annual Report Presentation.
It says it's a county council item, so I guess I should call up Mr.
Well, I'm not gonna do it.
Randy Rendig to give the George Hales annual report.
Well done.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Last year, I remember coming up here and talking about the fact that the report was very positive, and I was looking forward to giving the report. Unfortunately, I can't make the same speech today, but we're going to go through these slides and have some explanation on what happened last year. And if you have any questions, obviously after that, be happy to entertain those. So the first slide shows the total program costs and the percentages by lines of payment. And so, as you can see, the George Hales administrative fees, frankly, over the last 3 years, at least all begin with a 7. And, it increased 2% last year, 4% this year. It's still, though, with the number of claims that we get, although every year it's a similar number, there's a lot of differences in the claims we handle depending on how much litigation we have. So I think those costs are good in terms of remaining relatively the same. I'm sure the owner would like to see numbers higher than that, but that's the way it is. The attorney's fees and costs went up substantially, and that's as a result of a number of large litigated cases that required a lot of discovery, and a lot of those cases had attorney fees exposure, which of course drives up the cost. You can only do so much in terms of trying to derail plaintiff's counsel and doing what we would say sometimes is unnecessary discovery, but you've got to do what you got to do to defend the case. It looks bad against last year, but the year before that, it's very similar. So you never want to have a higher benchmark than you had before, so it is higher, but again, similar to 16, 17. Where you really see the difference are the claim payments. Substantial increase from last year and a big increase from the year before. You'll see an asterisk next to that $15.3 million number. Part of the explanation of that got cut off on the bottom of the slide. $5 million of that was paid by an excess carrier. And so when you knock that down to 10.3, it actually is less than what was paid in the 16-17 because there weren't any excess carriers paid then. But we had a large case where the SIR was paid and the excess carrier paid an additional 5. So if you want to say what did the county actually pay, it's $10,003. But of course, that's not the real measure. It's the overall cost of the case because you still have to pay for premiums and that sort of thing. So that's what is meant by that asterisk. Miscellaneous fees and costs, that again are minor expenses we have sometimes for an auto appraisal, stuff that we can't categorize in with legal fees or legal expenses. B shows the dollars spent by category, increase or decrease. Unfortunately, as you'll see, except for the miscellaneous fees and costs, they are all increases. Again, the George Hales fees up 7%. Attorney's fees and costs, again, when you compare 16-17 to 18-19, it's not too bad, but it was up, again, as I said, this year versus last year because of the types of cases we were handling. Claim payments. I want to mention at this point that in your report, you will see reference to the claims payments going up 18% from the prior year to this year. It's actually 125% in the report. The slide is right. The narrative had the wrong figure in it. That will be corrected, and I will be shooting out a new copy of the report to you. I was actually looking at the 18% of the attorney's fees and costs rather than the claim payment. So in the report it says 18%, it's actually 125%. Again, the miscellaneous fees and costs and the total. So 2018-19 was a big year in terms of payments. I'd like to think that there were good reasons for it because of, again, several multi-million-dollar cases. But if what we have in our inventory right now doesn't fluctuate too much, I would expect that number to go down somewhat. Actually, I take that back. Next year, it's going to be going up again, I can predict, because of one particular case. So we won't, since that case isn't resolved, we can't talk about it now. So in addition to that $7 million payment, again, 5 of which was from excess, there were 7 other payments that totaled $6,032,000. And what that really means is you've got 8 cases that represent 85% of the dollars that were spent. So again, it's all about large losses, all about the large shock losses that affect these kinds of numbers. Exhibit C shows the assignments per law firm on the 5-panel firm, which now is a 4-panel firm. The Krager Chalfant firm was disbanded last year, and in fact, Mr. Chalfant is now a George Hales employee and is our general counsel and is involved in some of our clients' matters and other general counsel George Hales information. So they no longer are receiving any files. We have, with the 4 firms and running anywhere, as I say, in the last 3 years, from 55 to 80 new assignments a year. That's 4 firms can handle that with ease. So if the number goes back up and it gets back up to triple digits at some point, I certainly think it would be worthwhile to look at hiring another firm. But again, 100 for 25 new files a year for each firm is not a big caseload. So.
This question might be for county council. How is it determined which firm, I mean, is it just a rotating or is it based upon expertise? I mean, how do you guys decide?
That actually is a question for Mr. Rendon,
is it?
because
Okay.
George Hales does assignments of these
Yeah.
cases.
Each of the firms have their own respective areas of expertise, some more than others. For instance, Porter Scott, that has 37 lawyers, they could handle anything they want. The O'Day firm is smaller. The Rivera firm is small. Actually, the Rivera firm, which took most of the Krager and Chalfant work, is now a bigger firm, but it really, supervisor, is expertise, what their current overall pending in the office is. Can they handle, do they have too much work to where they may not be able to give you the type of service that you want because they have too many files? But it really is, and the other thing is familiarity with the various departments, because you see a lot of repeat with the sheriff's department, even public works, and so when they've already talked to the same person in 5 different lawsuits, it just makes sense to keep talking to that same person. You're not reinventing the wheel every time. So expertise, familiarity with department or individuals involved, and the overall assignments that are going on within each particular firm.
And do you manage who within the firm is assigned to a case, or do you provide input on that? I mean, so
Yes
we're
and
not
no.
getting associates all the time?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It depends on the case. If it's a big case, the partners know they're supposed to handle those. If it's a smaller case, then there is some discretion amongst the partners as to whether they will still be responsible for that case, but they may have an associate do a lot of work on it.
Okay, thank you.
D is the costs distributed amongst the firms. Again, as you'll see, and I should say with respect to Evans, Wykowski, and Ward, they are the smallest firm we have, and really their expertise, if you will, again, any of the other firms could handle these as well. But they do a lot of road cases and they do a lot of auto accidents. And they don't have anybody right now that practices in the federal courts, and so they get a smallish kind of, they may get a lot of cases, but those cases either get settled fairly early on or they may go to trial, but not a lot of them do. And so that's why you see a difference in their fees versus everybody else's. E is showing litigated cases closed during the year, with payments, without payments. We always shoot for as high a number as we can without trying to force a case that maybe you should pay something on and it costs you way too much in the end because you tried to not have to pay anything. The philosophy has always been if we owe it, pay it, get rid of it as soon as you can. If it's a good defensible case, defend it. So 60% closing ratio is the highest it's been since I can remember doing this report. So good, but again, there's not a lot of, we can only influence so much how a case is going to resolve. And a lot of that is the luck of the draw, but some of it is a result of good or bad claim handling. I'd like to say that it's not the claim or the bad claim handling that affects those numbers, but there's only so much you can do in any given case that's going to make a decision as to whether you owe it because there's probable or clear liability, or whether you're going to defend it because there's little or no liability. So 60% is a good number. There's really nothing wrong with any of those 3 years numbers. F shows where the losses come from. Not surprisingly, and this would be true with almost any municipality, law enforcement these days, no surprise that they are constantly getting hammered, sometimes rightfully so and sometimes not rightfully so. And so most of the lawsuits and the big target is law enforcement. And we get a lot of non-meritorious lawsuits that go away quickly and we don't have to pay a lot on. We get other cases that, you know, there may be clear liability and we've got to pay on, and we try and get rid of them as soon as we can. Typically, however, those are filed where the plaintiff's attorneys can recover their fees, and so they will drive up the cost as best they can, do as much discovery as they can, and then decide to settle the case. Again, we try and resolve them early on if we can, but we do meet a lot of roadblocks in terms of the attorneys say, well, I really think I need to take 10 more depositions, or I need to hire 5 more experts. And so that's a battle you're always fighting with an attorney fee exposure case. All the rest of the departments and agencies it's spread around pretty much the same. Rather than the typical law enforcement where you have civil rights violations or officer-involved shootings, the rest of them are pretty much auto accident, road cases, and employment cases.
What's non-jurisdictional?
I'm sorry?
What's non-jurisdictional?
They've sued the city, they've filed claim or sued against the county when it happened in the city.
Oh, okay.
And we get a fair amount of those, as I'm sure the city of Sac gets a lot of ours as well.
Okay.
So we still have to, you know, do our thing in terms of immediately rejecting and advising the attorney that you got the wrong agency. Sometimes we can do that by getting a declaration by the involved department. In instance, if it's on a city street saying county doesn't own, maintain, or control this intersection or this stretch of roadway. Most of the time, a lot of the time, not most of the time, attorneys will then let you out if you give them the proper declaration. But if it's a big, big, big case, they're going to try and keep you in the hopes that they're going to find something.
Right.
So. G is by type of claim. Again, the other bodily injury. This seems to flip back and forth from year to year. It's either the other bodily injury that's the highest, or it's the other personal injury which is the highest. Last year it's personal injury, this year it's bodily injury. Again, not a big difference, 45% to 39%. But the other personal injury cases we define as there's no bodily injury, if you will, nothing physical that they can go in and treat it for, but if it's emotional distress, somebody was fired to where they have a wage loss and they have emotional distress, lost wages, but there's no actual physical injury, those go into the other personal injury column. And this, the final slide, just shows a 10-year history of the new claims received every year. It's amazing to me that, again, the last 3 years are within, I think, 20 of each other from low to high. I did, just for fun, run to see what the 10-year average is, and it was 610. So back in the mid to late 2000s, we were still handling backup into structure sewer losses, so the claim number was a lot higher than that. It would be in the 800 figure, 850 figure, sometimes 9. But with that taken out, that is really representative and to me, remarkably the same in terms of the overall number. So, questions?
Yeah. How do we compare to other jurisdictions? Do Do you work for more than Sacramento County?
We do. We do.
Do you have any that are of similar size that you could compare us to for number of claims?
Paul Height's done some research on that, and he'll address you on that.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Height. I'm the Risk and Loss Control Division Manager, otherwise known as the Risk Manager. And your question had to do with how do we compare with other entities. In the report, we provided some trend information regarding claims and how we compared, I believe it was with 5 other entities. As you know, we're a member of the Excess Insurance Authority. I requested data from them on a comparative basis so I could produce this information. I did ask that they redact the names of the other entities, but you can see by the population and also by the payroll that there's some sizable counties in there, also a sizable city. In terms of what I'm looking at and what the Excess Insurance Authority is looking at is the comparative loss ratio. And that's over a 10-year period. And that compares the premiums that our county paid, as well as those other entities that are on this chart, with the losses. And as you can see, our loss ratio is 180%. And it's the highest of those other entities. We were not the highest. There were some that were higher, but they were much smaller entities, so we basically took those out of the mix. In terms of what's driving our losses and our loss ratio.
I'm sorry, could you pause for a minute?
Yes.
It says, if I'm looking at the right page, it says 10-year trended loss ratio. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes.
What does that mean?
What it means
What's the loss
is,
ratio?
okay, the loss ratio is a comparison of the premiums that each of those entities paid, including the County of Sacramento, and the incurred losses. So when we have a loss ratio of 180%, it's in essence saying that for each dollar premium that we paid, there was $1.80 of losses, and that's adverse. And liability, a normal range would be somewhere around 40 to 60%. And it's being driven by some large losses that we had over that 10-year period.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at these other counties. I in a city. I guess they're all not that far off in population. I guess what can you extrapolate from that? I mean, maybe if you took out these large losses that you're referring to,
It would make.
Are we about the same?
It would make well, our numbers would substantially go down. For instance, last year our loss ratio was about 84, 85%. So it was less than half of what it is for the current period of time.
So are these losses that we've actually paid, or could they be on appeal or something like that?
They're both paid and some are still open.
Okay. So some we don't know the answers to, but they are included
Correct.
in the percentage.
But we have to
the loss
include the
ratio.
incurred values of those claims that are open still.
Okay. And I'm sorry, what does total collection mean?
Those are the premiums for the 1920 policy year, and our premium was $3,319,000. And then some of the other ones you'll see are much higher, but some of those entities, while they have lower loss ratios, they also have different loss exposures. For instance, some of them are running hospitals and other types of facilities that are very high risk, and therefore their premiums reflect that.
So the two that have a $13 and $14 million premium, those would be
They would be running
with
things,
hospitals in it?
Yes, they would be.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Supervisor Natoli.
Yeah, Paul, just kind of following along the same vein of questioning, in that chart, there are different self-retentions,
Yes.
and we've been at $2 million for quite some time, so what have we looked at the cost of, because again, that's the other thing taken into account here is that, if you sell it for anything under $2 million, we're paying it all, right? We the county, we self-insure that amount. In other cases, well, at least in two of them, County 1 and County 3 by comparison, they have $1 million loss, and then their insurance kicks in. So I know that as our carrier and certainly a claims adjuster that we look at that, but I guess particularly in light, recognizing some big losses put us, double, if not triple or quadruple what other comparative counties or cities are on the hook for. So have we, in any recent times, examined what it would mean to go to $1 million deductible? Would it be cost prudent or unwise?
Yes. Yeah, each year when we submit our application, we ask for multiple proposals with a whole range up to, I think I've gone up to $5 million. And in our opinion, it's not cost effective to go down to $1 million based on our loss history. I think the excess carriers are going to price accordingly. So what would happen is we'd be trading dollars. We might get a lower SIR, but they are going to make up the difference in the premium. So the premium would substantially go up.
Okay, so our premium, in answering Supervisor Peters' question, so it's $3.3 million. That's our
Yes.
premium. So we pay $3.3 million to basically get $23 million in coverage, up to $25 million. Most, I guess,
million.
most occurrences, I guess, are some specialties we buy. But how much do we pay out on the $2 million piece of that, of all those losses? What's our self-insured portion of that?
What were the losses that we paid out
Yeah,
within
or on
our
hook for
SIR?
that get to $2 million or under. So
I'm sorry, I don't have that data
Okay.
readily available. I can produce it, but I'd have to run some reports.
any just wild guess on what that would be? Because that includes everything, including the $5,000, trip and all that. But I mean, all the way up to $2 million.
Pothole claims and everything else that fall there. We have a substantial number of claims that fall under the SIR, but I couldn't give you a dollar amount. We only have a handful of claims that exceed the SIR, so
Right.
that's part of that equation right there. Very few go over the SIR. We have a number of claims. I believe in our closed session we talked about this. We have a number of claims that are within the SIR,
Right.
but they're still substantial. But it might be 20 or 30 claims that are going to be, say, above the $50,000 level all the way up to the SIR or higher.
So on the charts that Randy spoke to where, those are fees and payments, I guess. I guess it would be, again, if it didn't require a lot of extra work, but to have a chart that shows, because in looking at this 180%, that includes the big, where we're going to self-insure, but we're also going to we got some potential liability outside of the $25 million of excess coverage. But I guess to know what we're paying out in any given year, I don't say annually because it's any given year, so we get a premium of $3.3 million and some change. And then on the other side of that equation, for all claims that have been settled, what we basically get paid out. And then we have this exposure beyond that for cases that either under appeal or that we paid out. They'd be, I guess, to get us some idea of what, as a county, we're paying out on an annual basis, year to year, because we're self-insured and that's how we do business, and that's the most cost-effective way, as you've just pointed out. And I know we've been at $2 million, but do you know what that number is? And maybe that number is readily identifiable, but I think to put it into perspective, and you responded to the question I said Supervisor Peters asked, but I think it may put the perspective as just come what the normal costs are of serving a population of 1.5 million people and all the exposures you have relative to liability and personal injury and things that go with, having a workforce of 12,000 people and so forth. So if that's something you put, I think that would be of interest, at least it would be to this board member, so. If you could.
Would you like to see a report produced just to that or included in next year's report to the board?
Well, if you have a number that's easy, I think certainly you get a report coming, back to us, you can respond
I think
to
if
us.
we can produce it, we'll get it.
Yeah.
We'll get you something.
But then I think annually that'll be a part of it too, because I think it may help
No,
put some
understood.
perspective. Yeah.
Understood.
And
Okay.
I think I might have the answer to your question about the cases over 2 million, because in the report on page 5, it says that according to the excess carrier, we've had 6 claims above the 2 million SIR within the last 10 years, and 1 last year. I think, was that the question?
Well, yeah, it doesn't tell
I mean,
not-
the first question.
Yeah, it does.
not
Yeah,
what
the
you
answer,
just
yeah.
said.
So that gives you the numbers, and it kind of goes to the exposure on the 180% this year. But I think that then what is that number that we go from year to year that actually is the one that we're paying?
Right.
So yeah, that does
I
answer
can
part of it.
produce that report.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Lisa.
Are there any other questions?
Any other questions? Nope, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so your nominations, item 50. You guys have that?
Yep.
All right. You are continuing to September 10th, the Cordova Community Planning Advisory Council, Sacramento County Alcohol and Drug Advisory Board. You're continuing to October 8th, the Developmental Disabilities Planning and Advisory Council. And for your matters today, we have the Disability Advisory Commission. Mr. Kennedy.
Chiefs recommend nominating Calvin Cassidy and waiving the process.
Second.
Unanimous vote. And we have the Natomas Community Planning Advisory Council. Mr. Cerna.
Please continue to September 24th.
Okay. Public Health Advisory Board, Mr. Kennedy.
I've always wanted to say this. Chiefs recommend nominating Michael Jordan.
Sacramento County Mental Health Board, Ms. Peters,
Please continue to September 10th.
and Mr. Natoli.
I continue to September 24th, please.
Okay. And we have the Sacramento County Youth Commission, Mr. Kennedy,
Continue to September 10th.
Mr. Natoli.
September 24th, we don't have any applicants. We're trying to get out to the schools with some information, so give us another month, please.
Okay. Sacramento Environmental Commission, Mr. Kennedy,
Continue to September 10th.
and Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Commission, Mr. Kennedy,
Continue to September 24th.
Mr. Natoli.
September 10th, please.
Okay. Sheriff's Outreach Community Advisory Board, Mr. Cerna.
Please continue to October 8th.
Okay, and then Ms. Peters.
I'm nominating the reappointment of Douglas Hayland.
Okay, Supervisor Frost
I nominate Michael Martell.
and Mr. Natoli.
And nominate the incumbent, Bill Cardoza.
Okay. And that concludes your nominations.
Thank you very much. At this point, does the county executive have any comments?
Nope.
Members of the board?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Just a question on item 55, information item about contracts and so forth. And just by way of reference, I know there's kind of short titles on these, but under the contracts, we are now referring to work at the main jail as the main jail new tower. Is that the new reference that we're going to be calling whatever we're going to do over there? Because that's what's called out here on the chart. So I didn't know that we determined that yet, but that's what the contract says it was for. Not to build it, but for consulting services, so.
I'll have to look into if there's
Okay.
any name.
It was, you mean they're calling the new facility?
Yeah.
Over here? Or RCCC here?
No, here, yeah.
Yeah, so we don't want to call it that.
Exactly.
Well, that's what I'm
We
thinking,
don't wanna
but
call it
but that's what it's called out here on the chart, so.
Thank you, Don.
Okay, good, thanks. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, we're not calling
No,
it that.
okay, all right, thanks.
Any other questions, comments? You're adjourned.